Okay, for people joining this live stream, this is one of a series of meetings about image, audio, and signal processing features for the upcoming new version of Wolfram Language. So where have we got to last time?
We passed all the image functionality in the middle of audio. I guess we stopped after voice styles and the discussion about entities.
Okay.
And style pickers.
Do we need to come back to that, or should we? Let's keep going on this list, and I think we might have to come back to that separately. Is that correct?
I guess we already have a meeting for that next week.
Okay, I didn't see that yet, but okay, fine. All right, where do we start here?
Audio identify.
Okay, is that running?
Yes. Prototype builds.
Okay, so if I like cough or something, it's going to tell me what it is. Is that right?
That one I haven't tested, but things like instruments, speech, those are the kinds of categories, about 500 categories we can identify.
Why is the prototype build not coming up there? Something's coming up there. So let's see. Oh boy, this notebook seems diseased. Something's working. Okay, so if I say audio capture.
That one might still be broken. You have seen that earlier this week.
Does it work at all?
No.
Okay.
But you can get many of the audio data, example data audio.
Something beeps in the background. Might have been something crashing here. This is not, doesn't seem to be working. Oh, yes, it is. Okay, so if I say flute, for example, audio flute, and I say example data of the flute. Why is it taking so long? Oh, did it just crash? It's just crashed. Okay, I can't run this. But so basically the idea is, should I look at audio identify in docs?
Yes.
So you have a masking mechanism for audio, just like for images, is that right?
What do you mean, like for images? Image identify doesn't have masking.
No, I understand, but here you've got a masking option for audio identify.
Right. This one we can say what parts of audio to look into to identify the type.
Image identify could also have a masking.
I suppose so, yes.
I'm not sure if it's a good idea. Okay, so I don't understand what this is. So this is what is this? Is this the various possibilities, or why isn't it like image identify where it's primarily giving you one thing?
The data set that we have used in this case is labeling the same audio as multiple things. And that's why here as well in the result, we are thinking it's more correct to return the multiple things.
Well, you could say the same thing about image identify, but image identify tries to identify a single dominant thing in the image. And I'm kind of imagining that here, a typical use case would be, I don't get this, because I think that the thing I might also want is something which is more like image contents, where you're generating like a time series where you say, this is a bird chirping type thing. Am I making sense?
Yes.
I'm not buying this particular thing. And
the
this is absolutely, there's no chance in hell we're going to show this.
No, we're not.
It's excluded.
Yeah, okay, fine. Okay, but I don't really get this. In other words, let's think about use cases for audio identify. It's like you have something and it's got a fairly small loop, and it's like, there's a noise. What is it? It's a dog barking. It's a whatever, right? It's already been, audio has already been sort of shattered into those pieces, or alternatively, you're trying to tag, just like you are with image contents and things. You're trying to tag pieces of audio with what they are. Am I right?
Parts of audio, you mean, right?
Yeah, pieces of audio with what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're claiming that the pure play, I mean, like image identify, it's a rhinoceros. You know, one can reasonably expect that there are pictures of things, right? So
Right.
it makes sense to try and identify a single object in it. Now, with audio, you might make the claim, which I think is false, that there's usually more than one thing going on.
Right.
But I think that's not what this function is about. I think what this function is supposed to be about, presumably, I mean, it's not consistent. I mean, if you have a rhinoceros and an elephant in a picture, image identify is going to say one or the other. Am I making sense? Right? Image identify gives one result by default.
It does, yes.
Right. So audio identify has to have the same behavior, in my view. Now, maybe it's not a useful function to have. Maybe the useful function is something which tags audio in an event, in a time series, with which parts of it are a bird chirp and which parts of it are a dog bark.
I don't think it's useful to use time series of entities. Because what vector space can you operate on entities? The values are vector spaces. But we have annotations, so you could say over this time segment, there is a dog barking.
Yes, 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 yeah. Hold on 1 second.
I mean, it seems pretty random that for an image of the lots of things that it just picks out one thing. This one could be equally random, and there is one that gets more things, right? Image cases or.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, it also is because there's an algorithm, look, the dominant image thing, what is this a picture of? That is a fairly common question, right? Mm-hmm. What is this sound is a less common question, except I could run it on all these background sounds from these phone calls. What is it? It's somebody, eating a watermelon. No, I'm just joking, but, I mean, that's the question. Image identify, it's what is this thing? Audio identify will be what is that sound?
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
But if you want that level of consistency, then we force this one to return a single.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Value too.
It's a what is this sound?
I don't know what the technical limitations are from that, because in
we could really post-process and just get the highest probability identification out, but I guess
also the longest time. I mean, if what you hear is okay, so if you hear a screech of tires and then you hear shattering glass, what do you say? I mean, or this is just the wrong function. I mean, and the right function is the thing that gives the tag time series.
It's not just having multiple identifications at different times. You may as well have just the wind as the background noise all the time, and then the dog barking all the time.
And what? And what's the point? What does it return then?
Both of them. If we have, if you have.
Yeah, I understand, but you could also have the dog's barking for 3 minutes. It's a dog barking, okay, and then there's a little bird tweet for 1 second. Does it mention the bird tweet or not?
This one, audio identify, is not designed to. No, it actually samples the whole audio. So even if your audio is very long, it just samples the audio.
Okay, so
we don't have a good sense about what portion of the audio was covered by identification 1 or 2.
I'm confused. So, in other words, you say it's just sampling, so it might miss the bird tweet, or it might miss the key thing. I mean, it might be like you've got an audio and it's nothing much is happening. It's just rustling and so on, and then suddenly there's a gunshot, for example, and what you care about is that.
And
but
we may miss that now, right?
Okay, so that's not good.
So I think that this thing of annotating the whole thing with what's going on when. Yes. It's the analog for images of annotating the image with little rectangle and says what is in the different parts of an image.
Right. But we have a mechanism, namely time series, which is from which we could extract. I mean,
But what I'm saying is that that's not going to be a useful time series, because how are you going to interpolate between entities? How are you going to operate on entities as if they're in a vector space? So you're thinking of some weaker form of time series, which
Okay, but so you're saying that the thing we don't have is sort of a categorical time series, whereas at this time, this is what was happening.
Yeah.
You're saying we have a time series where the values are in some vector space.
Yes. The whole framework assumes that you can operate on them as if they are a vector space.
I think we've encountered this issue in other places too.
Right, but what I'm saying is that it's a much weaker form of time. I'm not saying Correct. It's not useful, yes. But it's a much weaker form of time series.
Well, let me ask you this question.
How would you low pass filter those entities?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Let me ask you this question. Timeline plot, okay? It deals with what you might call a weak time series too.
It's even more general, because it deals with both events and intervals.
Right.
It doesn't deal with what changes.
No, I understand, but that's basically what we want for audio identify. We want to know this was the interval where the dog was barking. This was the interval where the whale was. But
what do you want to do with the stuff that comes out, which is not a time series? It's something else.
Okay, so I think a typical thing you want to do is you want to say how many times did the dog bark? Show me a plot of the average time between barks.
Mm-hmm. That's really going to be eventually audio content. So audio identify, I think we should assume we have a consistent identification or thing happening all across the audio.
It's not so it's a small. So the thing is intended to work on a small piece of audio where you say, "What is that weird noise?"
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like image identify is intended to work on a small piece of image where there's one dominant.
Where there's one thing that's going on.
Yeah. So I think that those would be the analogs. Yeah. Now, we have something else that I think is very useful, not only for this, but for a variety of things, which is a thing that's later in this review, which is called audio annotations.
I see that. Yeah.
Okay. And so, for instance, if you want the song lyrics, or you want the notes, or you want the text, if from speech to text, or you want the
speakers,
or you want a variety of other more technical information too, which is very common in linguistics and other areas. Then you can have those as annotations, and that's in fact a common thing to do, to annotate up or.
Well, so that's going to raise the question, what about audio? What about image annotation, which we don't have?
Right. So we're looking at that too. I think that would be extremely useful in medical image processing, DICOM format. It's all about the annotations. That's the whole goddamn workflow. Yeah. The actual core image is sort of yes, it's important, but it's the doctors mark up and annotate. And that's happening.
Well, what's interesting about annotation, and maybe you're going to come to this in audio annotation, is that not only do you want something like textual annotation, you also might want to annotate a region, for instance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, happens in audio as well. You may want to annotate a single time that some event happens or an interval.
Yeah. So we have both.
Okay, fine. But so then ultimately what you're saying is that audio contents will return some annotated audio.
It could. Right?
It could.
It could, because there we have sort of then processing flows out from that can, among other things, we want to be able to convert those into more that can be processed in a variety of ways throughout the system.
Yeah, I understand. So, okay, but then Okay, so audio identify, the plan would be it's intended for small fragments of audio where the question is, what is that noise?
Just as image identify is.
Yeah, which is fine. And you know, for example, it should be able to tell you that's the bird call of the such and such kind of bird.
Right, but I think it's 500 categories at this point, right? So it's not as, whereas image identify is 5,000. So it's a factor, it's an order of magnitude smaller.
10,000, I think.
I think 5,000.
But whatever. So, for example, you know, we did have from several years ago that project, that birdsong identification thing, which turned into the Bird.ai app. It might be worth that. That's done by Joffrey and Andre's group. You might want to track him down.
We looked at various more specialized areas, which this one isn't. Okay, this one is a general purpose.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, but anyway, so that's a potential build out, and you have a hierarchical.
You know, I want you to be able to pick out that this is a 2012 Ferrari.
Sure.
You know, there's a very
with a loose something or other.
Right. You can go infinitely deep in this stuff.
Yeah, right. But okay, but
this is a 1959 Gibson.
You know, okay, so there's a specificity goal. I mean, look, what we've done in the case of, let's be clear, in the case of audio image identify, we are dealing with picturable common nouns, right? So that does not include things which are not described by essentially a single, you know, noun-like thing in English, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it could be a multi-word thing, but it's basically a noun construct, and it's not something where there are serious adjectives added onto it. And I think, you know, for example, you know, a bunch of species, that would be the case, but it's not like it's a 2-year-old such and such kind of bird, as opposed to just that generic bird. But I think it would be worth, in the case of the I mean, I don't know whether there are data sets for all these things, but okay, so that's a direction to expand in after. So you say there are 500 sound types that this is currently dealing with? Yes. Fair enough. Okay. All right, let's just have a little look at the other. What is the sound entity object? Oh, a sound entity object. Wait a minute, a concrete entity object. Oh, I see, that's the different, okay. Does that mean, okay, when there is a bark, is this thing trying to return dog, or is it trying to return dog bark?
The dog sound or dog bark, the sound entity. And as you see, the entity object is futurized. I don't know where we're going to be going with that. I think it makes sense more to have sound entity objects returned. As opposed to
the generator entity. Yes. That is. So in other words, you know, okay, so that's a little tricky because, you know, if we know the generator, for example, a dog bark is made by a dog. If we have that mapping, which we certainly could have from the sound entity, right? We certainly could have one of the properties of that be its generator.
Mm-hmm. Same thing should happen for concept entities and entities. Concepts are coming back from image identify, and we don't have proper linking between those and generator entities yet.
So maybe we should, okay, so that's an issue for the content curation folk. That doesn't sound so difficult if that's the way we do it. I mean, then what you're telling me is that you know, then for the bird songs, it's a, you know, cockatiel sound is an entity distinct from the cockatiel itself, right?
Yes.
Okay, I understand. I think we're going to need those generator things for the sounds. Maybe you can try and get those into curation.
Okay.
They should be pretty straightforward. I mean, you know, but clearly some things will not have, for example, you know, squealing tires. It's not clear. We don't probably have a generator entity for that. You know, I don't think we want to return. We might have a concept entity like car, for example. Okay, so there are different kinds of entities. There are the, oh boy, what a messy thing. All right, this is something for Alan.
Okay.
try and unscramble. All right, let's just look at this function some more. So it's mirroring image identify otherwise. Correct?
Right. I guess really the only...
I hate that way of, by the way, writing out the mixed caps version. We should avoid that. We should just call it quotes class in the docs here.
all lowercase.
Yeah, we just should avoid that kind of notation because we're not, we don't usually use it.
Right. There are only a few places I recall we have that, but sure, I can change that.
Various questions on our live stream. Would there be a way to cluster a longer audio clip into chunks? Absolutely, we're working on that. Yeah. We're absolutely working on this. This is what, yeah. So an audio equivalent for YOLO used to create bounding boxes. Yeah, we absolutely do have in the neural net repository that you can find online. We absolutely have YOLO networks and so on, and we're absolutely using that for image cases. I don't actually know how the audio scanning stuff works. Does it use a YOLO type algorithm or something else? When you're scanning for what are the different elements in this, what are the different kinds of sounds in this audio stream, what does it use? Do you know?
We don't have it yet, right? The audio contents you're talking about.
Yes.
No, we don't have that yet. There are networks proposed for that. It's on our plan
fine.
to have it, but yeah, no, we don't have it.
Do they work the same way as the YOLO networks for images, or do they work some different way because it's one-dimensional?
I think it's a different way. I have to look closely, compare.
Okay, onward. All right, audio instance queue. Is this a dog bark? That's basically what that's asking, right?
Yes.
Seems reasonable. I mean, I suspect if we can have these generator entity things, it's like, is this an elephant? Rather than having to ask, is this an elephant sound? I mean, it should support the generators as well as the sounds themselves.
Right.
Okay, let's see, net encoder. What did you have to add? Do we need to look at, we're not talking about image contents at this time, right?
No image contents yet.
So is this a thing you've marked up, the window function? What is window function here?
If you go to the audio net encoders.
Why does this say that it's a net encoder? That's really weird.
In the box, but yeah.
No, but I'm just wondering why in the file name, oh, I see it's part of net encoders. That's something we might mention to Brian, that it would be useful when you see a page like this. This looks for all the world like a ref page. And it should have some stripe at the top here. Maybe it's in the categorization. Yeah, entity type, net encoder. That should be more visible on this page. Could you mention that to Brian?
Right, sure. Then I'm assuming you want that for all other special types of pages.
Yes. Okay, so I'm not seeing the window thing here.
It's basically just, I just checked with Carlo. We haven't, he hasn't updated it.
Okay, fine.
It's just going to be one of those other string parameters for the net.
Okay, sounds reasonable. Feature extractors. Okay, great. So.
Right, now we're using audio identify to extract features by default. So it's a great improvement there. You can also see it in feature space plot.
That same thing. Okay, sounds good. Okay.
You may want to look at feature space plot. There is one example in the ref page for audio. We have some special labeling for audio that is allowing us to also play the audio objects or the audio instance.
Oh my gosh, we went bonkers over here. What the heck is this? So it's a spectrogram with a play button.
Yes.
Did design look at that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I think it's cool.
We've gone through several iterations. I don't know if this is the latest, but we've been toning down for a while there. That play button dominated everything. You couldn't see things. It's been,
I mean, it needs to be nice and transparent.
Exactly. That's the direction
so
we're heading in.
The spectrogram is strangely different from the way that in other words, you could, when you have an audio object, display the spectrogram immediately. I mean, as it is right now, and I'm not sure I'm wild about it, if I do, your generic, if I do a generic audio capture, assuming my microphone is picking anything up. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, so that's all I see there. And there's no easy way. I mean, the only way to get the spectrogram is to literally ask for the spectrogram.
If you hover over that audio label in front of the file, you see the waveform. If the audio is very long, you see a chopped waveform.
I didn't know that. Well, you learn something new every day. I certainly didn't know that showed the waveform. Okay. Interesting. So if I say show that, it's actually not showing the waveform. It's just showing this.
But if you start playing, then it's going to dynamically show you the waveform. Or if you click on it, it's going to show you the...
So explain to me why we should show spectrograms rather than the waveforms here.
Generally, it has more information.
Well, I agree. Well, fair enough. Yeah, sure. Okay. It bothers me slightly that, if that's the case, why aren't we showing spectrograms for the, for a generic audio?
In that expanded view, if you click on that viewer in the middle, it's gonna, or maybe double click on that, it's gonna, okay, yeah. Now start playing again. It's gonna show you.
Shadi, I had no idea. I've never seen this before. How would I possibly discover that feature?
I'm pretty much sure we have shown this to you, but I agree that it's not intuitive to...
It's absolutely undiscoverable. The fact that you double click on the middle of that thing to get it to start showing you like a stereo, thingy is like how would one ever discover that? I mean, if we're going to do something like that, we've got to have some notifier that says that the first time people look at this or something.
Right. Maybe at least a tooltip. That would be the very easy way to do it. But
well, why not? I mean, a tooltip seems like that's the tooltip down there. But you got to do something here. I mean, I'm not sure anybody's going to mouse over this area. Why would they do it? Why is there anything in that? See, here's the point. To induce the mouse over, if you say something like greater than, or ... or something like that, it kind of induces a mouse over because it's suggesting there's something else there. But this, I would never have thought to mouse over it because it's like, well, it's just some random UUID. Why would I mouse over it? Am I making sense?
Yes.
Yeah, so, okay, I think this needs some work. I mean, what could we do here that would just give it a hint? It needs some kind of hint that there's something to see here. I think why don't we ask the design folk to suggest something here? Reasonable? Let's not get this now because I want to get through at the end of the agenda here.
I'm guessing other than the tooltip, you're thinking about some little icon over there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm thinking about something that would cause you to want to roll over the thing ever.
Okay.
Because otherwise I'm just like, that's a dead piece of material. I don't want to roll over it at all.
Right.
How do I get out a full, if I say audio plot of %3, then I will get the traditional waveform type thing. Yes?
Yes.
And how do I get that like stereo thingy thing? Or is that only something that makes sense instantaneously? The frequency bands picture only makes sense instantaneously, I think.
Right.
Okay, let's keep going. So all right, I'm okay with using for the feature space plot. I guess I'm okay with using these spectrogram icons. I think it doesn't make sense to use. I think it's, as you say, it's more informative for feature space. You know, it'll be like vowels or something, and you'll see different spectrograms for different vowels, and you wouldn't really see anything different in the
Waveform.
In the waveform.
Right.
Okay, let's go on. Audio stream, current audio. What is that doing? We haven't had current audio. We don't have a current audio function yet, do we?
We don't. No, for now, this is a soft release of current audio, I guess. We're adding a property to audio stream objects that is taking called current audio, which is returning the current buffer of the audio that is being played back or captured from the device. And then you can do the same dynamic of audio stream current audio to do similar things as you would do with dynamic of current image.
So what is the typical buffer length?
4,000 or something like that. I think we have it somewhere.
So it's like 1/10 of a second if it's 44 kilohertz sampling.
Right.
Okay. So, and how would one actually use this? This would be something like one's feeding it in progressively to a neural net or something?
We could do that, right? Sure. That would be...
I don't know if we have a mechanism for that quite, to feed it into some kind of sequence-based neural net. I mean, right now we're primarily in speech recognize. We're primarily taking a whole clump, you know, of audio and looking at the whole thing.
Right. But we could do things like, you know, if you're looking at longer chunks, you could do audio identify at that chunk. Maybe for now, more interestingly, would be something like give me loudness of local loudness or dynamic loudness.
I see. So you can show, or for example, you could do that spectrogram. I mean,
sure.
Whatever the name, what is the name of the plot that makes the that thing that shows, you know, activity in different bands?
Equalizer.
Okay, but I mean, how do we make one of those? Can I do that from this? From that audio, how do I make an equalizer picture?
Don't know if we have a.
So that's relevant if we've got a current audio instantaneous type thing, right? It's not relevant here. Okay, so audio plot doesn't support that directly, right?
No, this is just a waveform plot.
Okay.
But I guess, Roger, we did think about having this more generic as well.
We did, yeah.
Different modalities of plotting.
Yeah, it's not obvious that should all be an audio plot. I mean, if that's because obviously the dynamic current audio, I mean, what one would expect is, you know, dynamic audio equalizer plot, you know, dynamic of audio equalizer plot of current audio. And that would then show you that thing bouncing around on the screen. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Equalizer is not quite the right name. It's really sort of the amount of energy in each frequency band. An equalizer would you would set.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the instantaneous. It's the spectrum as opposed to the spectrogram.
Yeah. Right.
It's like audio spectrum plot.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. What is M4A streaming? What does that mean? I mean, what do you mean by that?
It's just one of the formats we didn't have streaming for. So audio out of core audio couldn't support M4A until we added this.
I see. Okay.
And then it like M4B is another extension for M4A. Audiobooks use it. And some of them are very long, so it's important to have it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but the streaming that's like streaming
12 hours long.
Yeah, right. That's like streaming out. Might be I should read the version of the NKS book. I wonder how long that would be.
Probably more than 12 hours.
Let's see. I have half a mind to figure it out, but let me not. Actually, I'm just curious. I'm sorry. Let me satisfy my curiosity here. So let's see. I think in the colophon, it will say how many words there were. 583,000 words. So here, probably if I say 583,000 words, if we're lucky, 65 hours of speaking.
Great. I had a couple of audiobooks that are in the mid-20s or 20 hours. Those are
Look at how accurate this is. The book is actually 1,200 pages long. Look at how accurate that is for a single-spaced document. Well, although it thinks the book will be shorter there. Okay, it had a lot of pictures. Okay, all right. Anyway, so that's 65 hours. Boy, I'm not going to do the audiobook version of that in a hurry. Okay, onward. Audio block map. So what is that? That's the analog block map for an audio function.
Right, we've had that before. We just had the function version of it, so the function argument could only take actual functions. Now we're adding some predefined string functions.
Like what? You see those hash audio?
No. Sorry, yeah. We're adding, instead of argument, we're adding those named arguments.
I see. That isn't correctly spelled. That says partition rather than partition.
Partition. Okay, I'll fix that.
That I have some confidence in DQ8. We should get it correct, but
I'm surprised. Why is the spell checker not running on that thing? That seems like a more systematic bug. Maybe there's some bug in tentative cells not running the spell checker. You might want to show that to Brian.
Sure.
Okay, so these are. So what does it do by default? Operates on raw data, can work on other forms of the partition. So I don't understand how you tell it that it's going to be given I mean, that means it's being given an association, right?
You can say, so F could be something like max of slot audio data or max of slot Fourier data. And then in the second case, each partition is converted to the Fourier, going through Fourier transform. And then that data gets passed to the function.
Sorry. I spaced for 1 second. Could you say it again?
I'm saying the function F now could be something like max of hash is basically max of hash audio data. Mm-hmm. But you can also say something like max of hash Fourier data. And then you just send the partition through Fourier and then send it to...
No, I understand that, but structurally, when we do something like this, normally, and by the way, this isn't how we normally document, elements of an association here. We'd normally say just F is given the association with keys, blah, blah, blah.
I don't think we are actually in the code creating an association. You may not need all of
that. I understand. So this is very similar to what happens in Cloud Submit, for example, where there's a callback function.
Right, exactly.
And so what we do there, right, is we say what keys are going to be used. Right, so we specify, which might be convenient here as well, right? We're specifying, like in this case, we would say, well, what would be a good example? That would be Cloud Submit, for instance. You can give, there we go, the following events, handler functions keys, right? That is the list of things that you can tell it are going to be fed to the handler functions, right?
But those are really the string keys of that association, right?
Yes, that's right. But that means that you get to have the handler function say F of hash task and so on.
I see.
Okay, so this is more analogous to what happens in the mail. Like, for example, if I say mail receiver function. Okay. Okay, so here, I don't actually know how this works. It derives an association here, but I don't know whether it actually gets the whole association or whether it's some kind of lazy process. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hope it's lazy, right? Because you may need all attachments and stuff if
Right.
you're just
So
looking.
you could ask Fahim how that works, but this is the documentation pattern, and this is, I think, the usage pattern for something like this.
Okay.
And I mean, what you're doing here is you're saying you're changing the functionality, basically, because a single hash you just want to say is the raw audio object, correct? But
Yes.
this hash Fourier is something different. So I'm a little bit...
Right. And I think I got that from one of the time series functionality that we're documenting arguments of the function f like that. Roger, you remember which one?
Moving map. Moving map, probably.
Sorry, what are you saying? The... Oh. Huh. I don't think I've ever seen this. Well, I'm sure I have. This kind of needs some consistency discussion. I'm not thrilled here. I mean, I don't understand how it can access both of these, right? I mean, if you take, well, how does it work? If you take an association and you say hash 3, it's not going to get that element of the association, right? If I say association, A arrow, B arrow, blah, 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 and then I say, I have a function here that says, hash 2 ampersand of that. Yeah, it just says that.
That's, yeah.
Whereas if I say hash B, it'll come out like that. I don't like this very much. What are we going to do with this? I mean, this is exactly what we solve with the handler function keys for these other functions.
And I'm guessing for something like moving map, Roger, I don't know the full history, but maybe the numbered arguments were introduced first. And then...
Yeah, I mean, this predates the thing of seeing it as an association.
Right.
I mean, as a compatibility bridge, one could do things where there's some weird method function that determines whether the thing will automatically look to see which one of these it is and whether it will generate an association or a list, which is basically what you're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not a beautiful solution, but I think it's got to be consistently an association or consistently a list. And I think in many of these, an association is good. But as I said, the documentation isn't right here. It should be more like the mail receiver function documentation. Because there are many different ways you could potentially use the association. I mean, you could say, you could use values on the association and just extract all the values, or a whole variety of things that are operating just on the whole sort of association together.
Yeah, I'm not sure we even had a super working association at the time we did that function.
Well, fair enough. But I'm saying maybe we need to, we can have a compatibility bridge, but maybe we need to move to the preferred form being the association one.
Sure.
So, I mean, if you need to, let's get a meeting that involves particularly Fahim, who worked on the mail stuff and on some of these callback functions, to go through the general way to do this. Does that sound reasonable? Otherwise, I would just, expect to feed these things in association with a possible compatibility bridge. Are you happy with that?
Feed what things? It's generated.
No, I'm saying you feed this, you feed the function f an association of these things.
Oh, I see.
As long as we can do it lazily so that, as you said, not everything is computed.
Right. Well, that's a question that we have to ask Fahim. I don't know what the infrastructure for that is. Okay. So can you ask him, and we can get back to this in a subsequent meeting?
Sure.
Let's try to move through this right now. So web audio search, what on earth is that really going to do? because not such a okay. So this is keyword-based web audio search, is that right?
Yes.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. That's very weird. What's that doing?
Those are well, you can specify what properties you want to get back in the data.
So, for example, a very typical case is web image search, and then quotes thumbnails, which will just give you a list of thumbnails. And I think here you should have an analog of thumbnails that's probably something which is just a sampling of the audio. I mean, in a perfect world, one would have a trimming function for audio analogous to the auto trimming that we're trying to do for images, where you're trimming to point of interest.
Mm-hmm.
And, in the thumbnailing here, obviously, the physical size doesn't cut it for audio. But maybe there's some way, I mean, if we had auto trimming, we could trim out, like, the thumbnail of the audio is a few second piece of audio. Did that make any sense? I mean, I don't know. Boy, I'm now revealing my hopelessness that, like when you sample audio from a typical music site, they'll give you little pieces of songs, right? Those little pieces are what, 15 seconds long or something?
Mm-hmm. 15, 30.
Okay. But so maybe the thing to do is the analog of thumbnails is something like that sample, which is always from the beginning or not always from the beginning?
Typically not from the beginning, because typically the beginning is
boring in some way.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so fine. So there is an auto trimming that's going on there. And if we could do that same kind of auto trimming to find the interesting 15 seconds, then that is one definite thing we'd want to return here. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
And I do think
that free sound is all free. The free sound and SoundCloud are the two services we are trying to connect to. SoundCloud is a bit more tricky. Users can specify copyright and things like that. A lot of the tracks are not even downloadable. Most of them should be streamable. But for that, we need to finish our round of proper URL streaming so that really we just get a chunk, play it, get rid of it.
But so what's the analog of fair use for, showing thumbnails for sounds? I mean, I know there's a history of this. It's kind of complicated.
Right.
And I mean, does SoundCloud allow you to have, a way to essentially extract a thumbnail of the sound?
I'll have to look into it. That may also differ based on the copyright that the user specifies. I don't know if all.
But okay, but I mean, the correct thing, in my opinion, for this would be just like you have those spectrograms in the case of the feature space plot. I think there is a useful thing to do here. Well, I don't really know. I mean, the thing one wants. What is the right thing here? I mean, the typical thing is going to be. I'm not sure. What talk to me about use cases for this web audio search.
So, I think that over time we'll add more services.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is it going to split? So free sound has kind of like crushed glass, female screams, dog barks, all those kinds of things that you might use as various amateur
sound effects.
Yeah, sound effects. So that's that kind of interest,
Yep.
It's almost like an icon, like an illustration, like something.
Yeah, clip art.
Yes, clip art for sound, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
SoundCloud is more like musicians publishing, and it's becoming kind of like a publishing platform, but they're pivoting all the time, so it's hard to say exactly what they're doing in order to make it, viable. But it started out the way I describe it.
Okay. But so what do we expect people to do with that here? I mean, some people are going to do random machine learning on, I want to generate a Mozart bot, and I want to have a bunch of sampled Mozart performances and things.
Right.
Yes.
Machine learning uses.
I think you can use it in a variety of ways. Let's say that you wanted to have an auto-scoring function,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to create the score from it, or something that gets the text, or just the actual illustration. You know,
Yeah, I understand.
how you're going to get it. You know, I just want 5 seconds of a Bach fugue.
Right. But then, I mean, one day, but I'm sure nobody's, I mean, with image search, you can feed in an image and search for something which has some vague match to that image. Is there an analogous thing with sound? I don't think people are going to care about that.
There are services for that, right? Like Shazam is you just feed it
that's
as
true. Well, it'll tell you what it is.
Right.
Yeah, it's a different thing. I mean, given this approximately, yeah, you're right. It's the same.
But then you can search with that, right? Once you know what it is.
Yes, for sure. It's effectively solving that problem, right? Okay, but anyway, back to this. What is the sample piece of this doing?
If you click on it, this is that. Does that work? Is that yeah? It should work. It should be just a sample audio that is provided by Freesound. Typically, if it's shorter than.
I can't hear anything, but okay. So I don't understand why the duration second argument generated this output.
So title is always there, and I think sample is always there. So duration was something that got added.
I don't think we should do it that way. Look at how web image search works.
Okay. No, I agree that things, and then I'm assuming you want more of a flat list result rather than data set results. Although I think
yeah, I mean the default is a data set for web image search, but the case that I seem to use most of the time is web image search, thumbnails.
I see.
Okay. What do you annotate? Do you have something for this yet?
Yes.
Oh boy. Okay. So this has some structure wrapped around audio that's kind of like masking, but it's annotations. Is that right?
It's a type of meta information that's intended to be processed. You know, it's like properties in graphs, the things that's sort of in addition.
I think it helps if we actually go up that list rather than going down the list. Annotations is a new symbol we are proposing as an option, as a new option that can go to audio for now, and then image, time series, whatever else later.
We already have that function called annotation, right?
Yes.
Which this is nothing to do with, or is it?
No, it's doing nothing with it. It's just that it was taken, so we made it plural.
Oh, for goodness sake, no.
We really thought about calling this something else, but annotation seems to be the very correct thing to call.
If that's what we call it, we should probably, plan to migrate this function. I agree that your use of annotation seems good, which suggests to me that we should gradually retire this use. So we document this one as something else, and although annotation singular will still work, we won't plan to promote it.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I mean, I don't know what is the difference? What is mouse annotation? Dynamic mouse annotation. The heck is this? So annotation, mouse. Okay, so this annotation is basically providing a current value that can be picked up by a dynamic when something is in focus, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm deeply running out of time right now, but I think what we need to do here, I think what we should plan on is renaming this to something like, I mean, because we've already got things like mouse annotation, which is already quite weird. I mean, we should have a discussion with John Foltz and try and see what we can do with because I think this function has been less successful than we might like. It's been with us 11 years now. I think it's, you know, I think it grabbed too big a thing. But it's easy to do the compatibility bridge. I mean, there's not a big problem with that. Let's get a meeting about this, please, with John. Can you do that?
Yeah, I'll send a request for it.
Okay.
Now, annotations is the option. Annotation value is the one that can set and get values for that option. Audio annotate, eventually image annotate, and so forth are going to be functions that are generating with a higher level functions and objectives, annotations for the object.
Right. I think that's interesting. I mean, so that's an automated. So audio image annotate would be the analog of image contents, but it sprays information into the image object.
Right.
And then the returned display, just like you're saying, audio plot will support annotations, so would image basically support annotations. The default appearance of an image that has been annotated is to have annotations on the image.
Right. I guess the default may not have the annotations, but in the case of image. But we may
image. I don't know whether it should display them by default. That's a different issue.
Okay.
Maybe the attached cell could allow the annotations to be switched on or off.
Sure.
But here, there's obviously got to be by hand annotations that you support. For example, you know, just mark this particular interval as blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you do that here?
So currently annotation value can take an association. You can actually type it in. So I want from time 1 to 2, mark it as speaker 1, mark time 3 to 4, mark it as speaker 2. We don't currently have any interactive way of injecting annotations into audio, but that could be another way.
Wow, this is wild. This is really wild, in my opinion. This is an L value. What the heck is going on here? What is the semantics of this?
It's just an L value.
But what's an L value? The whole annotation value thing is an L value?
No, so the one thing that's absolutely key is that those annotations go with the audio and they don't live somewhere else, because then they don't survive a session and other.
I understand that. So they should be, I mean, but normally the way these things work is you put, you know, it's like, show with graphics or something, right? You change some aspect of the graphics, but most of the actual data is, you know, internally it's just a pointer, you know, but there is a separate expression that is the one which has had the new annotation done.
Yeah, so that's what we want to avoid.
Why?
Because then you have, but for bulk, you know, you really don't want a copy.
No, I know, but that's not a copy. That's the whole point, Roger. It's not a copy. The core thing in that case, with show, the core data is not a copy, right? It's only the wrapper that has to be copied. And I think the same should be done here. That is, the core audio thing is not going to get copied. Somehow it is just, and I'm not saying necessarily how to do it, but what happens is, you know, like there's a core image that might be 10 megabytes or something, right? But it is merely the wrapping around it, that's some kind of outer image wrapper, not the core numeric array or whatever it is that actually is the image, the raw array that is the image, would never be copied.
But these live out of core. You know.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, but the wrapper does not have to live out of core. The wrapper is its own. So you're saying it lives out of core. So great. So it has a UUID basically. And the thing the thing with the wrapper can point to the thing with the same UUID. Am I making sense?
I guess that, yeah. Well, for out of core, the problem is less severe, right? Because even the copy is not as expensive. If you're
But
talking
you're not
about
going to copy it. You're never going to copy it because it's just going to point, the big blob of data is at some UUID out of core. Right?
Right.
So what I'm saying is the annotations should be a thin layer that could be copied if they had to be. You know, parts of them could be copied because it's not a big deal because they're just a thin layer. Just like any other expression where you say append to this list and so on, and certain things get copied and others don't. There's no way we should do a thing where you have an L value that is, you know, it's not, well, anyway. Okay, listen, I have to go. We'll have to continue this because there's several loose ends here. There's a lot of lovely functionality and some loose ends. So to be continued, I guess next week.
Okay.
But can you take a think about this idea of a wrapper mechanism for doing these annotations, please?
Sure.
And see where we can go with that. Okay. All right. I will see you all soon. And thanks to folks on the live stream. Okay.
Okay.
See you later. Bye-bye.